Hi there, and welcome to the online acting studio. My name is John Lehr. I'm an actor and a writer. I'm a hyphenate, Bob, and a producer. I'm probably most recognizable as the Geico caveman from I'm not recognizable because you don't know who I am, but that's probably but I've also created and starred in and written and show ran. Sounds impressive, but it's just nobody else would hire me. But I did a couple of shows called Quick Draw, 10 Items or Less, and Jailbait for Sony, Quick Draws on Hulu. And I'm here with a man who was in all of those shows.
Because I work cheaply?
And your talent. You brought the talent.
Anyway,
this is Bob Clendenin.
I'm an actor as well. I met John through a show that he had developed with his partner Nancy, and we were cast, and we became friends and working partners ever since.
Well, working partners.
Working partners.
Yes. I wouldn't go. Let's not go down.
I would say I'm a journeyman actor. I would say I'm one of those.
You work all the time. Everybody who sees you, and I'm with you, is like, I know you. They've seen you in something.
I'm a utility player. I describe it that I am like a season. Like if you're making a chicken dish, I'm not the chicken, but I'm paprika.
Paprika.
So I make the project better, but you don't want to build your whole meal around the paprika.
And you could still have the meal without the paprika.
You could have it, but
paprika can be fired.
Okay, well, we're starting off with
the chicken will still be made.
I think the paprika helps.
It does. It absolutely
in most cases, but it also can hurt your meal.
In a pinch, though, you don't need the paprika, which is
so
we're the first guys to get cut.
Yeah.
But Bob, name some of the things you've been in.
If I'm being recognized, it's usually from Scrubs, Cougar Town, 70 Show, Closer, Longmire,
Star Trek.
Dude,
Where's My
Car? All-time classic.
What's the thing you do?
Zoltan.
Zoltan, yeah. So everybody knows you, though.
But good movies, too.
Yes. Those were good.
L.A. Confidential.
Yes, and you're in the video game.
But I'm also in Kazam, and that neutralizes L.A. Confidential.
It does. But in L.A. Confidential, you're in the video game. What was that like?
That was called L.A. Noir.
Oh, right.
And they intentionally, I think, hired a bunch of the character people from L.A. Confidential.
Yeah, they were ripping off L.A. Confidential, but calling it L.A. Noir.
But I get calls occasionally from friends who are still gamers who just say they shot me, because you can shoot me in 3 different locations.
My son is playing it right now, and I'm like, that's my friend.
I bet he shot me. Hudson,
shot
I'm sure, would shoot me.
You.
Yeah.
What was that like? Did you have to put on one of those black leotards with ping pong balls?
The ping pong balls? No, this one was very surreal. It was in a 360-degree room, and you had to sit very still because it was all facially, and they had about, I think, 24 cameras.
Sounds like an easy environment to act in.
He would feed you lines and say, "Don't, that was a little too much. That was too much." And it was like I said, it was very surreal. But when it came out, it was kind of interesting.
Yeah, it looks. it's you.
It is me. Yeah,
it's so cool.
Sounds like
I'd love to be on a video game.
I think a real precursor to a lot of the AI stuff we're seeing now, because this was done 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Now, so if you were to talk to somebody who's new out there and getting started, what kind of advice would you give them?
I have this conversation with aging character actors all the time, which is how much the landscape has changed over the last 20. I came here in the mid 90s. Were you about the same time?
Me too. Yeah.
So in our day, which I know everybody's going to be tuning out the minute you start with something in our day.
Right.
We had our printed headshots. We mailed them out. We went to our agents to collect sides from the doorstep or had them faxed to Kinko's.
Yeah. And you didn't have phones.
You had no phones.
You had the maps. I had maps.
It was I think, cost prohibitive to make your own content, because film was so expensive to shoot on. You couldn't, shoot, so
making your own content was being in a play.
Right. That was making your own content.
That was making your own content.
So in some ways, things have, I think, become considerably harder for this new generation, because the numbers are against them, because, but in some ways, the opportunities for producing your own stuff, for getting yourself seen, are greater. So, the scale has tipped in both ways.
I totally agree. And that's kind of the way I came in. I was kind of on the very front of making your own content, because I knew I wanted to do a certain style that wasn't being done. And I came out of improv, so I had kind of a writer's mind and an actor's mind. And so I started to shoot. And yeah, that's my biggest advice. What surprises me is when I run into people who are new or breaking in, getting their start, and they're not shooting stuff. I'm like, what are you doing? I mean, it's a win-win. You know, you learn so. I remember I had a job on Friends. I was on Friends, which is the only thing my daughter cares about.
Right.
I've made my own shows. I've done all this stuff. No. One episode of Friends.
Right? Where you're the coffee boy.
Yeah, exactly. But there were 16 tape marks I had to hit in this one scene.
Right.
Like for some reason, the director wanted me to walk around the apartment looking at stuff. So I had to hit all these tapes. So I had never really hit a mark before.
Right.
Without, and things like that. So, I mean, I know you can get that in schools and you can get that in classes, but really it's just about being on set and practicing and learning. So even if it's crap, it's still a win because you're learning.
Well, and I think COVID changed some things for us too, in that we've now seen such a move to self-tapes.
Yes. You're very good at that.
I've gotten very good at it, I think. And but it's through repetition. Again, you can be taping yourself doing commercial auditions or theatrical auditions just to see, just to hone your skills and get better, even if you're not submitting.
That's true.
You get to review it. You get to look at how the choice you made reads on film.
But then you have to look at yourself, Bob. And I have so much self-hatred.
I know.
I mean, that just ruins my day to look at myself acting on film. There's one thing I don't want to see is me doing stuff on TV.
Just tastes too much like paprika.
Right? It's just right. A little too much paprika.
Right.
Little too much allspice.
All right, let me ask you, when you started, because you were at the very vanguard of improv being something that we were really honing in on
to use
in
to create
film and TV,
shows,
right?
Yeah.
And even prior to like Curb, that I think normalized it a little bit more.
Very much so.
How was that journey in terms of selling it to buyers?
Miserable. Completely miserable. I remember talking to an exec at NBC and telling her that I would like to take. I felt like the humor that's created through improv, which you are a master at, can't be written. Like there's a certain behavioral and vibe to that just can't be written. And I thought, hey, I still want to tell stories, but instead of scripting the dialogue, I want to improvise the dialogue. And I remember this executive saying, improv will never, ever be on TV, John.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The suits do not love the unknown.
No, they don't. And we've developed a way to write really scripted scripts, just no dialogue. And then the actors don't need to see them. They can if they want to, but as you know, they're really dense. And it's really just to make sure that we have a narrative through it, because I just felt like story was so important, but I wanted to get at that place. But yeah, it was hard. I pitched to Fox, and that was my first one. And they gave me what's called a, what were those temporary pilots called? Pilot presentation. Which basically, pilot presentation means we networks have found a loophole to rip you off, to not pay you pilot fees, but to still get a pilot
still get
out of it.
the nugget out of it. Yeah,
I mean, that there are other ways of describing it, but that's really the bottom line. But I was thrilled, and I this before I knew you, and shot a thing with 3 cameras. And, it was clunky as hell. It worked, but that was kind of the first where I kind of realized, oh my God, this is doable. And then I did a film with Nancy. I ran into Nancy Hauer, who turned out to be this amazing director and editor. And we did a low budget film on P2 cameras, which anybody who knows, those are like the early digital cameras where it would go on a card, but it would also go on a tape.
When you did the pilot presentation for Fox, was that digital or was that still having to use it? Was the very beginning.
It was the very beginning of digital. It also was on tape. And to make it look like film, these particular lenses we had a crystal that would spin and kind of give a flickering effect like film. And you'd have to turn on the crystal in the lens. But it looked pretty good, actually.
I think advice to some of the younger people coming in is that honing your improv skills is a very, very smart move. Whether you take some classes at UCB or Groundlings, et cetera, particularly commercially, they love when people can roll with stuff.
I've always thought improvisers should take acting classes and actors should take improv classes. You
can usually tell people who don't because they feel like if I don't stop talking, I'm winning the scene. Right. And the exact opposite is true.
Exactly.
I think, as you know, you can slay with one eyebrow.
Well, you can. I mean, when we work together, I talk too much, and then you do one thing, and that's the blow for the scene. Whenever we were editing, we'd always go, "What was Bob doing?" Go to his camera and be like, "Okay, that's the out."
Very kind.
And that's true.
But it's also when you work well together, it's because there's that give and play where you know when to throw the little tangerine back and you take it rather than mowing through. And because you're not listening, you're not.
Agree. And people who would audition for improv, our show, the mistake that they would make more often than not was try to show how clever they are by what's going on in their head rather than what you're talking about, which is just find the in between.
Listen and react.
Yeah. I mean, it's not whose line is it anyway. That's about how clever you are.
Which you also are a master at, but that's a separate animal. Right?
Yes. And but this is more about, and sometimes, interestingly enough, in those situations, because I would say you're an actor first and an improver second.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what makes you such a magnificent improviser. But you have actors who are really trained actors make the best improvisers because you're playing the moment, you're in character, and it's not about, being funny.
Right. The joke. Yeah, it's the being honest.
We've seen people blow a gasket on set where they're just trying to be funny and it's a monologue, and it's like, dude, that's never going to make the cut ever.
Right. I know that like when you come out of theater training, or certainly like I went to an MFA program after undergrad.
There it goes. So I wondered how long it would take.
I just had to mention it.
Okay. I have a BS and you have an MFA.
Look, we're still both contributing.
Yeah, but you bring it up.
So while I was in my MFA training, that stands for a Master of Fine Arts, John. You get very dialed into being true to the playwright. You memorize your lines. You can make choices within those lines, but you can't change them. And I think if you don't have the skill to be honestly in a scene the way an improviser is, an actor can get very rote. Right, yes. Because you
like lock it down and you keep it.
We all make the joke, blah blah blah, my line, blah blah blah, my line. So you can get into that pattern. But as an improviser, I need to be listening intently to everything you're saying, and then reacting.
Sorry, I missed all of that.
I need to be listening to everything that you're saying. Is what I said.
I was texting, but yes, I agree. Whatever you said is a yes, and
I see what you did there.
No, but yeah, you're right. And improv kind of reminds us of why we really wanted to act, which is like this connecting and finding something in that moment, like what theater is, and really what improv is when it's live. I'm doing live improv a lot now. I've been touring and doing that, and it's such a trip because I've gone from working with cameras with you, where the crew snickers and stuff, but in a live theater, I'm getting this feedback that I haven't had for so long, and it's so like, oh yeah, right, this is what it's about.
Well, and I've had directors in dramas say, let's forget the words for the moment. Let's just play the intentions of the scenes, and we'll just improvise that. So you're not looking to be funny. You're not looking to land a joke or to get in that little bit, whatever. It's actually about really, really knowing who you are in the scene, what you want to get from the other actor, and pursuing like objectives. So it's all that acting 101 stuff about who are you, what's standing in my way, and what do I want from this person.
And all the when the lines are stripped away, you can kind of dig down at that core.
Exactly.
Which is really the most important thing in terms of communicating scripted material, is that you have that core.
Absolutely. And if you're making up the words yourself, you can't get more sort of involved in the scene than that.
Now, on the flip side, if you're an improviser and you're coming to acting, it's very easy to get bored. Or, you know what I mean? Like improvisers are used to saying something once and then it's gone and being fine with that and recreating every single time. But now when you're coming to this scripted work, you dig down into this thing. And
I think that's a great point. Actually, why don't you, because I think it's very interesting, talk about how that sort of working dynamic informed both 10 items or less and Quick Draw, because it was almost a hybrid where we started out completely improvising, but then during the course of it, we were like, oh, that bit worked. I'm repeating that line.
Yes.
Because now we're shooting from a different angle, or we want to get it all in one scene, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, we tried to have as much play as possible so that we would begin to lock down on things only if the improvisers chose to. So there was no rule to lock down. And oftentimes what ended up working best were actors who kind of stumbled onto what they liked, and then they would do it again. And then you'd have other performers who would do new stuff every time. And I think that's one of the reasons we work so well together is I'm this idiot who can't remember what I just did and I do it again, whereas you're kind of refining it. And it's such a great combo. It's an actor bringing an actor sensibility to improv, and I'm an improviser bringing that to acting. It makes a unique hybrid.
I remember, especially during some of the like 10 items or less stuff, that the hardest were group scenes.
Yes. Yeah.
Because it's just so in that kind of format, it's really difficult. Everybody wants to kind of get something in, right? So you move away from that real close dynamic.
It's a really zen thing. To do group scenes is the most difficult thing because you can very quickly get lost or very quickly steamroll other people, and you don't want either of those, right? You want this kind of natural flow that improv brings, and it's the way we tended to solve that was we would treat a group as one person, as one actor almost.
Right.
And then you'd have a camera that was just kind of, trying to grab the group and staying fairly wide, and then have a single on you and a single on me, knowing that we're going to do most of the scene, but the group, like the Greek chorus, is going to jump in.
Right.
And that, and that works, in a pinch, but it doesn't. What works the best is when you have that magical moment where you're in this group and everybody's connected. It's flowing perfectly. Yeah. Every character's represented, and we're photographing all of it.
Yeah.
But
what are some of the lessons that you have learned over the course of the last couple of decades?
Don't go into acting.
Great.
Number one.
Right. Fools.
Don't spend your time in college. None of that. The only thing you need to learn is real estate and get to LA. I don't know. I went to Northwestern and spent ungodly amounts of money for 4 years when really all they should have said is buy dirt, buy a house now. You laughed at me when I bought that block of drug dealers in Highland Park. And
Who's
now look at me.
now? I know.
No, yeah, I didn't buy it. Yeah. What have I learned? So much of it is, and I know this is a crappy answer, but so much of it is just the 10,000 hours rule, of sort of just, you got to kind of just get in it and find your own way. I think being flexible is really good. Yeah. I think creating something outside of auditions is really important, as we just said, about becoming a better actor, but also about your mental health. And if everything you're doing is to showcase yourself in order to get on TV or film or commercials, I think you run into trouble of losing yourself.
Yep.
And I've seen that happen where people are waiting by the phone all the time, and they're not doing the thing that they love doing the most.
Right. Right. Do you characterize yourself as an improvising actor, or do you cast a wider net than that?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not as good an actor as you are. Let's be honest, and that's true. Right. And I don't even cast myself as an actor and maybe I should, but I've always just wanted to create stuff and using myself as a way to communicate. I want my ideas to be communicated, and communicating it through the vessel of me is what I learned in Chicago and in the improv world. And it's just an efficient way. But when I pitch stuff, I'm always the first to say, they're like, John, are you going to do this? And I'm like, if it helps sell the show.
Right. But I don't have to.
No. And so.
But you also come from a world where you were a stand-up.
Yeah. Did a lot of stand-up. And so to me, it's about communicating, ideas and serving other people to get their stuff out. When I just did a straight play, two-hander.
And you were excellent.
Thank you. I was scared to death.
Yeah.
I hadn't done anything like that in a long time. And I loved it.
Yeah.
I found I loved it. I realized, oh my God, I can just kind of free myself from that and just enjoy being this person. And it was really great. But I think for me, I need that other side too, to kind of keep me fresh.
Are there any choices that you regret not making early on that you think would have been advantageous now?
Yeah, I should have taken more improv. I mean, less improv. I should have taken more straight acting classes. I took some, but I should have done more. But I was on drugs, Bob.
I know.
I was on drugs for the 90s, and now I'm sober and I can't go back in time. I'm too old.
Do you think that you are a very different person now, or you would be a different point in your career if you had done that?
I do think so. Yeah. I because the only way in for me was to kind of create my own stuff, and I loved doing that so much. I followed that at the expense of maybe doing some more acting stuff on the side, which I should have. But what about you? Do you feel like going down the?
I wish that, because I came in here from, as you know, I mentioned I had the MFA.
Right, you said it. And you were handsome as hell.
Very handsome. But, I came here, I needed to get pegged down a little bit, because I think I left a training program thinking that my shit just didn't stink. And because that's kind of what you're taught to believe in those programs.
Right.
You're in an acting pool of like a dozen.
Yeah.
So you got cast, right? It's like
you're paying money.
No
to
shit,
get cast.
you got cast, right?
Yeah.
So that in itself is not an achievement, and you think, and you're led to believe, I can play anything, because in my second year I played Lehr. I played,
not me, but King Lehr.
Right, King Lehr. I played, I played, in some Eugene O'Neill thing. Like I could play anything which in one way is very good. It tells you not to have boundaries about yourself, not to have, preconceptions that, I can't do that. And it's designed to make you fail. That's good. The problem is you leave there thinking, I can do anything. And you get to Los Angeles, you're like, I know you can't.
Yes.
And they're not going to want to see you
They
as
want
Lehr.
you to find your lane.
You find your lane. And I think one of the things I wish had been impressed upon me is how much your individuality is going to be your ticket to success.
Yes.
Whatever makes you special. And
that's stand-up. Stand-up is very much like
exactly.
that.
You got to find your own voice, right?
It's not the jokes as much as it is your point of view.
Right. And I'm, for better or worse, a very charactery looking guy.
Handsome.
You're sweet. There's a couple other words that they use in the industry for it. But,
Viral.
Not one of them. Not one I heard.
Really?
But if you find your niche, if you find what you are being perceived at by the general public, and then you just hammer that, that's how you, I think, forge.
And then
a career.
once you establish that, then you can break out.
You can branch out,
but if you come in, you're absolutely right. And this happens all the time in auditions, because of being on the producer side, I see actors audition. I've been in tons of auditions.
Very valuable, by the way.
Very. Turns out casting directors are crazy, by the way.
Yes, they are.
Because when we sold our first show, we had to interview casting directors. Oh my God,
they're nuts, yeah.
They scared the crap out of me.
Yeah.
We hired Tim Payne just because he was the only normal one.
Well, they take because most of them were actors, so they've got all that the preloaded crazy,
right?
And then they add a couple other layers on it.
Yeah, but in auditions, what you see is a lot of the same takes on things.
Yes.
And then you see somebody come in who's doing their own thing. They know what they do. They like to do. And you're like, wow, I may not want exactly that, but I like enough of it that, because remember, you don't have to nail it to get it every single time.
Right.
It's more about like, do I want to work with that person? At least for me, there was a lot of that a part of it too.
Yeah,
you know?
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, I think stereotyping got a very bad rap. You say, well, you don't want to be stereotyped. Well, you kind of do, because then you found your place
or
in
at least
the
know
industry.
what the stereotype that you physically and that you vibe out, so you at least understand that.
Right. Exactly.
And what is our stereotypes now? Old white dudes who
You're much more of a lead, but you've always been more of a leading man.
Not
and
anymore.
I'm going to be.
Look at me. No, that's over.
No, I don't think it's over.
Oh, really?
No, it's just
I have to dye the hair.
The target audience has just shifted a little bit.
We need to get into closed circuit television for old folks' homes.
That's what we could make a killing.
Yeah, we could. Like porn.
Bridge jokes?
Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, we should talk about that after. Don't give away any ideas here. Don't steal it. Okay, so where do you find, and speaking of that, where do you find yourself today? Like what kinds of roles and where, as a man, you've done an amazing thing. You have had an entire career where you haven't had to work any other jobs except for acting.
Yep.
And there are not very many people who
very
can
lucky.
say that.
Yeah, correct. And it's been just a little slow. There's not been, we have friends who get out here, they're here 2 years, and then they land some huge series, and they skyrocket, and maybe it pays down. I haven't had that. I've just done the little step for 20 years, where it's just gotten a little marginally better each year, and more interesting projects, bigger roles or whatever. But
how do you handle an audition now versus when you first started out? Like, what do you do differently?
We were talking earlier about validation, and I think I fell into the trap that if I wasn't booking, it was because I'd done something wrong.
Yeah.
And now I think I'm mostly clear of that. You still get very insecure, but like I know what I do, and I know what I tend to do well, I think, and what I'm less, suited for, but I don't need that validation to ensure me that I'm doing a good job.
That is not a small thing.
No, it's a big thing.
That is a huge thing.
And it comes and goes.
Yeah, because if you talk to any actor, the rejection side of it is the head trip. That is the whole game. Can you live that way? When I talk to people who are out in the real world doing real jobs, and I tell them that I interview constantly. I mean, how many shows have I pitched or, and you work, to pitch a show, it takes like a year, as it takes like a year to get it all together. And then you pitch it in a week basically, and nobody buys it, and that's it.
Well, that's what we do. I mean, you said it, our job is basically to be professional job interviewees.
Yeah.
That's what we do. And and if things are going well, you're getting rejected 8 times a week. Right? That's when things are going really well.
Right.
When it's not going well, you're not getting rejected or even asked to interview. That's when it's not going well.
And it is a weird space to transfer your brain to a place of like, hey, this just isn't right business-wise for them. It's not me. It's not something I could have done differently in order to get that role. It's just not the right fit.
You said you worked in or have seen from the other side of the table, from the casting side. Yeah. And I think one of the really valuable things you learn if you do that, and I would encourage anybody who is coming out, a great job is to work in a casting office. Maybe you get bumped up to be a reader with them, so you can actually run camera, whatever. So you see what's happening in the room. It's unbelievably valuable. And one of the things you learn is if you're part of the, if you can be a fly on the wall for some of the decision making, you see just how random these decisions are. Commercially, people are rejected because they remind the agency guy of his brother-in-law who he hates.
Right.
They are rejected because they wore a shirt that was inappropriate or was too loud or whatever.
And you can get upset by that all you want, or you can find a way to process that side of it so that you psychologically can survive this career.
Right. And that I think entails, meaning when you do as best you can in the room, commercially or theatrically, you leave, and by the time you're in your car, you've forgotten about the audition.
Right. Yeah.
It's extremely hard sometimes. one of the cruelest things this industry does, like during pilot season, is they make you sign a contract prior to going into the session, right?
Right. So they reduce the candidates down to like five. And they do a test.
And we're going to read for the
show.
network, and we're going to read for the studio.
Yeah, and you go into these offices filled with executives, but before they let you in, they make you sign your 5 years of your life away.
So, and you see the numbers, and you start doing the math in your head. How is this going? My life is going to change immeasurably. And you're doing this before you go into the room. I think it's a very unfair.
I landed a show, an NBC show called Jessie, starring Christina Applegate, and it did 22 episodes. It was a big network show, and it changed my life.
Yep.
Changed everything. Terrible show. I mean, Christina was amazing.
She was terrific.
But it was just whatever, just a bad show, but it changed my life.
Yep.
I was just going to say the reverse of that, of when you're pitching something. You know, I remember we worked on a pitch and went in to pitch it. And at the end, the guy said that they're not really looking for live action shows. It was a live action show.
Right.
They're not really looking for live action shows right now. They just wanted to see what was out in the environment.
Right.
And we're just like,
wow.
What?
So
I'm going to kill you.
Right.
And they didn't validate parking.
Insult to injury.
Mm-hmm.
So I was talking earlier about how, it came out here with all this training and they thought I was hot smoke, et cetera. One of my regrets is that I didn't, and it's the opposite of your regret, is that I didn't get involved with one of those improv places like the Groundlings, right? Like UCB, because not so much for wanting that improv training, which is incredibly valuable, but also because those relationships that are formed in those programs are the ones that then carry on for 20 years into the industry. You look at like the people Judd Apatow works with, or the people that Christopher Guest works with, or like so you see these little families form in those early trench days.
Like us working in all the shows we've done is
exactly, and because we know how each other works.
Yeah.
And so there probably is a lot better choice than me, but at least you have this level of trust with me that I know what I'm going to get.
Really? You think there's better? Maybe
we
should. No, maybe we should look. Maybe we should just look. Let's look.
But you also it could have turned out to be a dud.
Yeah.
So you're going to risk
it?
All
right, we'll go with you.
But that's true. Like there's a couple of people that I've worked with, like Bill Lawrence has been my savior. He's the guy that I found. He hired me in Scrubs and he's put me in just about everything he's done ever since.
Amazing.
So and he's great. And but he has a very strict, he calls it his no asshole policy. And that's why you see him working with the same people over and over again. Mm-hmm. It's not just that you can deliver in the material, but that you're a pleasure to be around. And so like that's why you see a lot of the same people showing up in the same films. Like same with casting directors, they like to hire a lot of the same people because
their
reputations, element.
Yeah, their reputations at
stake. They're not going to look bad.
Yeah, and if you're an asshole, if you're somebody like that, then it's not going to pan out well for you.
No, I mean you can be outstanding and get accolades and stuff, but I think the opportunities start to trickle away because people just don't want to deal with you.
Not you.
Yeah, you.
Generally, is there anything that you've ever turned down that you wish you hadn't?
No, not that I wish I hadn't. I came really close on I still remember a couple of roles where I was like, oh, I was so close on do you remember in the Green Mile they hired Michael Cheater. He was the little mouse.
Oh yes, you were up for that.
It was me and him.
Oh.
And I was very unknown. He's extraordinary.
But in that situation, that's where you sabotage. That's where you slip him a Mickey.
You mean I undermine him?
You cut him by accident.
Oh,
shit! I'm so sorry, my knife.
Yeah. So you're like, oh, that would have been a life changer, and I have those memories, but nothing that I think I won't commercially. There's some companies I don't want to work for. Certainly some political elements.
Let's list those.
Oh boy.
Okay, here we go.
No, we're gonna save this for the social media part of our discussion, which is when I admit just how awful I am on that.
Yeah, well, not awful, genius.
I'm pretty awful.
Really good. Well, I was offered to do the not Let's Make a Deal. Wait, which one's Let's Make a Deal? Is that the one with the...
Everybody's in costume and they...
Yes, that's the one. I was offered Let's Make a Deal.
I forgot.
And
a lucrative contract, if I remember.
Extremely. And I turned it down. We had just finished 10 items or less. And I was afraid. I was like, okay, I finally got my first show sold. I wanted to see now where we could go with it. We ran for 3 seasons. I wanted to create another show, which became Jailbait. And I was worried that this would maybe, I didn't know. I don't know why. I was just afraid I didn't want to be seen as in that light. And in retrospect, I should have done it. It was dumb. I really should have done it because you can do everything now. I don't think so much about where things are heading and sort of, I think I should have gone with the flow of life a little bit more. I mean, I think it would have been miserable doing it. It's not my cup of tea, but Bob, they offered me money. I turned it down. Then they offered me more. I turned that down. Then they offered me more.
No is the best word in this industry.
I've said yes ever since then.
Yeah.
But I did end up getting I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, which was a hosting job. I mean, it was a crazy job, but I took it and paid for my house.
I'm not sure that there aren't some jobs you shouldn't take. I had a friend who was in the big boon of the reality series heyday, in the 90s and early 2000s. And he was my big, fat, obnoxious fiance.
Right.
Great actor, great character guy. And they offered him this. He wasn't well known enough so he could do this thing.
They wouldn't know.
And the show was fine, but like it also kind of buried him for about 3 or 4 years after that. I mean, maybe now you're having more people transition from reality stuff into it's a little more accepted.
Take it.
Can I tell you one of my more embarrassing pieces of advice that I ever gave was in my early theater days in Los Angeles. Part of our theater company was Joel McHale, right? And I was the one that was working kind of a lot back at in the 90s. And Joel came to me because he'd been offered Talk Soup. And he wanted to know what my advice was, whether he should take it. And I, again, what a douche. I was like, I don't know, man. It's a talk show. It's like, you're an actor. You're a legit actor. To me, I don't think that's a smart choice.
Thank God he didn't listen to you.
And he didn't listen. He did talk soup, and now he's Joel McHale, and I'm hoping they validate my parking here.
I think, what do we know? I mean, I think we in general, I think actors overthink things because we have a lot of time on our hands and we think perhaps we know more than we do.
Yep.
And that goes with like, how well did I do?
Right.
You don't really know how well you did.
You got no idea.
I mean, we would do these improv takes of like 15 minutes long, and you walk off that and you go, was anything any good? Right. But in the edit room, we only need 30 seconds, so we're going to get something good. But I remember in Chicago, just being on stage, I remember my dad came to see a show and he comes afterwards and he said, it was great. And I was like, no, it sucked, Dad. It sucked. And he's like, look, I paid $20. If I say it's good, it's good. And it really kind of opened up my idea of like, what do I really know about myself?
Right.
Yes, I know some things and I'm not, things I want to try to do, but there's always got to be that open-mindedness to, hey, I don't know.
Right.
And that's part of what acting is. You just can't be objective.
We were talking about things that we wish that we knew when we first came out here. And for me, I think for a lot of the actors who've taken the time to do some training, whether it's, you have your BFA or MFA or whatever, you're a blank canvas. I think in the eyes of the theater community, you want to start off as sort of a blank slate, right? And then you add these character elements, et cetera. And when I got out here, I realized, no, you don't. The limp or the lisp or the eye tick or whatever you've got, that's what separates you. So you don't want to be a neutral slate. You don't want to have, that perfectly resonant transatlantic voice. Whatever your odd regional dialect is, whatever mannerisms you have that make you a different animal than everybody else who's auditioning, that's what you need to nurture and capitalize on.
Because you have so little time to make an impact,
Right.
And these auditions come at the last minute, and there's just, it's not you don't have a lot of time to figure stuff out. I mean, I think the thing with auditions is learn your lines real good. Mm-hmm. The sides are a crutch.
Yep.
that I thought that I relied on a bit too much.
Do you still go in with pages, or do you are you that off book? That
No,
you
I still
don't?
hold the pages because in case something goes. What about you? What do you do?
No, I bring them in.
Yeah.
It's backfired.
Because you got to pay me to be all completely. That's like the contract is like, hey, I'm delivering this. Imagine what I could do with some time.
I think that's the implied notion is like, I'm only about 70 or 80% there. On the day, it's going to be dynamite.
Right, exactly. Right? If you like this, it's going to get better.
It. But for me, it's also a security blanket.
Yeah.
It's something that you can hold. Is like, it will save you if it has to.
Yeah.
I had an audition once, though, where there were like 8 pages of material. And apparently I only printed the first 6 because... I finished the scene, what I thought I finished, and then I saw the person I was reading in the casting room, and there's producers everywhere, like turn their page. I'm like, oh no, there's more.
No, because it didn't have the end END at the end.
Got to look for the END.
Oh, I pitched a TV show once, and the woman I was pitching to started having a nosebleed. And just flowing, blood just flowing.
Right.
And we were like, oh my God, you have blood. And she's like, yeah, keep going. And so we had to keep pitching while blood is coming out her nose. And she bought it.
She bought it?
She bought it.
This
it never made it a full...
Not a business for the faint of heart.
Isn't that amazing?
No, it's great.
There was another very famous television executive that you would pitch to, and he had narcolepsy. And so as you're pitching, he would kind of nod off and wake up. And he was hearing everything. But you'd be pitching and go, Jesus Christ, can't he just like stay awake?
Right. No.
But
he bought from you too.
He did. So Bob, what have we learned here today?
That you and I have a lot of free time.
I think basically the headline is, don't do what we did.
Right.
Learn from these mistakes.
Right.
You don't want to end up like this.
No, you
doing
don't.
A podcast.
No, you don't.
No. We're not on an island somewhere. No. We're talking about how acting is.
We're double parked.
Yeah, we're double parked.
We have learned to nurture who you really are and promote that.
And that's good for not even just acting. That's just like inner child work.
Yep. To not look for the validation of others to decide whether or not you are being successful or not.
But I did do a good job on this.
You were very, very good.
Thank you. We've also learned to embrace your weaknesses.
Yes.
If improv is something, and to continue to take classes, not just necessarily to grow, which you will, but like you said, I think you made a really good point. It's a great way to meet people and see how they're going about it.
Right.
And I also think the excellent advice you gave was like, try to get a job in a casting place if you can.
Great.
Because you just see it.
You see it right there. You're like, I don't want to be that guy.
Oh God, do I do that?
Right.
Like I was auditioning, with my pants off. And nobody said anything.
Right. If you could have used just a little heads up.
No.
Tell you, that you can, I completely forgot where this was going. I had a great idea.
Don't do that.
Just went up.
Bob, you're a very talented man. I
John,
thank you for taking the time here.
Thank you very much.
A pleasure. And let's do more.
We'll do it again.
Yeah, even though we shot this is all we have.
This is our wad.
Yeah, this is it.